Tonight on Stuff We Say, Simon Tomley, Sonic the Hedgehog, programming, fan games, and more. This is one not to be missed. Welcome back to the Stuff We Say podcast, everyone. Today we're joined by one of my favorite game designers of all time. He's worked on ROM hacks, he's worked on fan games, he's worked on Sonic Mania, and of course Sonic Mania Plus, now available for Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and Steam. Is it on Steam?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And of course that's Mr. Simon Tomley himself, also known as Stealth. So how you doing, man?
Oh, doing pretty good.
Good. As I said, lots of incredible work, even before the stuff with Sega. Of course, work on iOS, Sonic 1 and 2, and before that. You've just been a major part of the Sonic fan community for a long time. The good part of the Sonic fan community, I should mention. There's a lot of aspects, but like, I've been seeing your work for years now. Of course, you've worked on Sonic Megamix, which was massive. And then there's Sonic Mettrix, which at this time I may or may not have a piece about out, so definitely stay tuned to me on Twitter for all those watching at home or listening at home, depending on what platform you are. But you've done so much just programming-wise over the years. And a previous time when we were talking, you mentioned how you started with the TI-99 4 and then went on to the Apple II, and you originally tried to make a Sonic fan game for the Apple II initially.
Yeah.
Could you kind of go into that a bit?
Well, there's not much to it, really, unless we're starting back on the TI-94. Basically, I just started trying to program really simple things on there, just printing stuff to the screen, some weird little bits like math quiz, something. And I've gone into database programming a little bit because basically my dad had a job as a database programmer at Sony. And so I kind of tried to emulate that a little bit, and I got a few of those little programs running, and eventually we got an Apple II, and I started trying to program for that. Sort of around the era of Super Mario Brothers, I had decided to move toward game programming more than utilities and stuff, and so I started trying to create a game. Well, basically a really basic platform game for the Apple II, and recently I've actually had a chance to play with it again. I got a Apple II GS now, and I had recorded a video and put that up for people to see. It's real basic. Like at the time, I couldn't even figure out how to make jumping work. Oh. So the character teleports instead.
It's a special power.
Yeah.
It's not a flaw, it's a feature.
Okay, so there was that one, and I tried to move on from that to basically I wanted to make a Super Mario 3 clone, and I made this small program with a sort of map screen on it. I got it to the point where you could move around on it. It was still in the 40 by 40 low res mode, and didn't really get very far with that. Eventually, when Sonic came around, then I had decided that this is the sort of thing that I wanted to do, was something more like Sonic. So I started looking toward making something with Sonic, and about as far as I got on it with the Apple II was to draw about half of Sonic's head. That's and yeah.
So going into your relationship with Sonic, you were there from the very beginning back in '91, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Like, go on.
Oh yeah. So I'd seen very shortly after he was released, I'd seen the game on display at a Sam's Club, and it just kind of blew me away at the time, and it took me a while to get to actually play it because usually it was full up and my parents wanted to drag me around, and but when I finally got a hold of it, I was like, wow. And it seemed, one of the things about it was it seemed to me more complicated than other stuff that I had played before, and I knew that I wanted to be able to do complex technical stuff like that, and I just had fun with it, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I want to be able to do something like this, and eventually it came to be I want to work with the people who did this.
So going even further into that, what was it that stuck out in the complexity of Sonic? Of course, it wasn't a control because technically, let's be honest. If you wanted to, you could probably use an Atari controller to play a classic Sonic game.
Yeah.
But was it the momentum-based platforming in particular? Just that type of momentum?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like exactly what I assume Sega wanted to be the most impressive thing about Sonic was pretty much what impressed me. So it's like
Nice.
the speed, the physics, just
So I guess before we go on, controversial question. What's a better piece of retro hardware? The Apple IIgs or the Sega Genesis, or I guess Mega Drive, since according to analytics we have a lot of European viewers now.
well, if you are looking to play games, I think it would be the Mega Drive. Like the Apple IIgs has I think it's a 6502 processor. Like I'm kind of hoping to look into that sometime in the near future and actually try and do stuff for it directly. But it has a 6502, kind of like the NES, but it's the 16-bit version, which, from my understanding, is kind of a hack of the original 6502 to get it to do a few 16-bit instructions. A lot of stuff's still 8-bit. And this could be just the Super Nintendo version. I'm not sure if there was like a later version of the processor produced, but that's where I learned the most about it was with the Super Nintendo. But I think that I would say that the Genesis would be better for it because it's just better suited for games since it's built that way. Like it's got specialty hardware for I/O stuff like the graphics, the sound. Just takes care of a lot of stuff that you don't have to have as a load on the main processor.
Most definitely. So moving forward, when would you say you first found out about the kind of the Sonic hacking and fan gaming scene? Because the first project I know you worked on was Sonic Project Mettrix, which you came on about 96, 97. But when did you yourself discover the community, and how so did you find it?
Well, I was part of creating it actually. Like,
No kidding.
yeah. So I started. I first got onto the internet in 1995 with AOL, and I had met a few people. Some of the people I got together with became friends with. We decided we wanted to make a Sonic game of our own, and the first thing that we did was that we got copies of Click and Play, and we tried to do something with that, but that I don't know how many of the viewers would actually know very much about Click and Play in specific, but it was like very, very primitive. It didn't even have scrolling as a native thing for it.
So like old versions of Game Maker, essentially.
Yeah, very, very old.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't working out. So I had some books that I had bought about a year or two prior to that. I had never opened them. I never took the time to look at them. I cracked them open. They were beginners programming with C, game programming in C, stuff like that. And I just got to work on it. Did a few demos. That game didn't quite pan out. During that period, I met someone named Andy Wolin, and got involved with his site. I forget what it was called. I think it's like just Andy Wolin's Sonic site or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think what I was doing at the time was mostly uploading reviews of the comics, the Sonic the Hedgehog comics that were coming out. And so we had gotten to talking about a more comprehensive site and everything, and we decided that we wanted to make a sort of technical site about Sonic. and that's what eventually turned into the SSRG, if you know that name.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that became the original SSRG, and we kind of recruited a few other people to bring sites into the group to just have a larger group, and we had let's see, one of the first ones was Andre Dirk's Secrets of Sonic the Hedgehog, I think it was.
Oh, cool. That actually sounds familiar to me, oddly enough.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what it was called. I know it was Andre Dirk.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy. He was the guy that was showing off a copy of Sonic 2 prototype that he happened to have.
Was that the Y prototype?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
that was
wow.
like, I think that was before Simon Y had gotten a copy for himself, because I think he is the one that actually released it to the internet. Andre Dirk was posting information and all because he had a cartridge, but I don't think he had a way to like dump it or
Dump it.
anything. Yeah.
So I guess just kind of going to that, like, what's the process of actually dumping a ROM? And I asked as someone interested myself because I have a weird Sonic Amiga demo thing that uh, I want to dump at some point, but have no idea about how doing so.
It's just a matter of finding a way to transfer information from one thing to another. Like with some of the old consoles, like the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, they had I think they referred to them as backup units, where it's a special hardware that you plug into the console, and then you plug the cartridge into the hardware, and it has a disk drive on it,
Oh, is it
and
like
then
the UFO drive on the N64?
yeah, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be one way. Another way, like you were saying something about the Commodore,
Yeah.
that yeah, you could for stuff like that, like with the 2GS, I know that I've tried recently. There's a special cable that you can put together that it connects one side to the 2GS, one side to the PC through USB, and then there's some specialized software on both sides for communication, and you just use that to transfer the info over.
Oh, cool. So something that it's would you say just one of those things that seems complex, but really there's simpler solutions than you may expect?
Uh, yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
So I guess going back in the main topic, so I felt like I should ask because I said I have that weird demo and it's a terrible demo. It's hardly a game, but it's like it exists.
Yeah.
It's not official, but it's cool. But um, I guess going into that, actually, bringing up Amiga demos and whatnot, would you say that a lot of what you're doing at the time kind of sprouted from the demo scenes that kind of started with the C64 and 8-bit computers and grown on to like the Amiga and the 2GS and whatnot?
For me personally, not really, because I had no idea that sort of stuff was actually going on at the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was several years after I had started actually using the internet that I had found out about any of that stuff. Mostly because the internet was just like small. There was very little on it at the time.
Right. Back when back when Amazon was truly just a bookstore.
Yeah.
But I guess going into that, so around that time, when did you say, would you say how throughout that did you get into the Project Mettrix project? I guess just kind of give a short overview of that one, since of course we have that larger piece coming out on it, if it's not already out when this podcast goes out.
Okay. Well, I started on PC, DOS, and Windows with that earlier team after we had tried with Click and Play,
Mm-hmm.
and I developed a few small demos there. First thing I released was just a basic tile scroller. Then there was a game that I called Knuckles' Ring Rush.
Oh, cool.
If have you seen that one?
I
It's
haven't heard
it's
of that one, no.
it's just basically a single room where you play as Knuckles. He can do all his moves. run, spin, dash, fly, or glide, and climb, and you just need to pick up enough rings within the time limit.
Oh, cool. So something I guess very simple, almost like a mobile-esque game nowadays, but it was the 90s, which means that, as I said, which makes it actually, really impressive, especially on PC.
Yeah, and from there, I was still trying to work on that particular game. It was called Knuckles the Echidna Last One Standing. The story that my friend had come up with was it was like based on the Saturday morning Sonic show,
Oh, sweet.
and Robotnik had finally captured all of the freedom fighters except that Knuckles was still out and about, and then he has to go and save them.
Oh, wow. That'd actually be really cool. I mean, of course, the biggest part of Sonic's never the story, but like, I don't know. I like the sad AM. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did you know about the
Canceled one?
yeah.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, when did you find out about that one? Because that one looked odd, to say the least.
I don't really know. Probably sometime in the early 2000s.
Was the playable version of that one ever leaked? For those at home listening in who don't know, there was a planned game. It was by Sega America, based off the Sonic cartoon from the 90s. But instead of a Sonic game, it was like, what, a 2D stealth Sonic game, I guess?
Sort of, yeah. It seemed to have some of Sonic's mechanics, but it wasn't really speed and physics based like the regular ones. But basically, it was just a concept at the time. Everything that we have is just stuff that somebody animated on some particular program. I forget what it was, but it was popular at the time on Amiga. Just yeah, everything that we've seen is just animations as kind of a pitch.
Oh.
Like they never actually got around to programming the game.
So it was just in the pitch phase, but never really got past that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't do though, especially seeing as we got Spinball, and Spinball was very much so cartoon influenced. And I guess what would it be without going to Mania, because I know we aren't mentioning that for reasons. I can see a bit of influence of that even in the new Mania Plus Encore special stages, I think. Yeah.
For the
Pinball.
you mean from? Oh yeah.
Yeah. With I'm seeing the Spinball influence. I mean.
I'm not real sure that there was much of a Spinball influence unless you mean some of the backgrounds.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that Tom designed most of the backgrounds at least, and I know he was trying to take influence from other games from the Genesis.
Oh, sweet. Because like I saw that, and like there's this one thing in particular where like the items are scrolling, and like I know it's a really nerdy ass thing to notice, but there's this thing in Spinball. I remember where I had like scratch and grounder kind of running along the background in a similar way to that.
Oh, are you talking about the one where there was a whole bunch of Scratch walking around an egg prison sort of thing? You have to knock him away to be able to open it up. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess going back, so you're heavily involved in this back late 90s. And first, like, Mettrix was started in 95 and you came on 97. So how did you find out about that project and come on to work on that one?
Well, once the other game fell apart, I was still trying to do something on my own. I was still putting together some little demos and stuff that there was several of them that never actually got published or anything. But Ron, who was creating what was Sonic Metrics, it was called Sonic and the Seven Rings at the time, and he came to me because he figured that he needed a programmer to help him work on the game, and he thought that because he liked what I was doing in C with the demos that I had put out, that it would be beneficial to get me to take that and use it to create a new version of Sonic and the Seven Rings. And it was shortly after that I don't remember why that we did change the name to Project Metrics.
And that was mainly just, I guess, Robotnik's weapon of the week for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess going into Mettrix itself, like, could you just give a quick summary for the viewers at home of what the game itself is, and I guess both the DOS version and then also the incredible EO2 versions?
Well, what exists of it so far, there are out of all of the demos that exist so far, there are, let's see, there is Shining Island Zone, basic first level. There's Guardian Castle Zone, which is actually Knuckles' first zone, since he starts his campaign on it at a different place. And then there's Bronze Lake Zone, which was finally created by the time we started using EO2 for it. I tried to create a 3D special stage for it. I'm not sure if I ever showed that off. It wasn't very complicated or anything. It was just like really basic early 90s wireframe 3D stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, still incredible though, because like I guess the closest thing to that is like what the CD special stages. If we're talking to Genesis games.
Maybe, yeah. It's like sort of a similar perspective, but accomplished in a different way.
Oh, nice. And so, Mettrix itself, it was in DOS for most of development. And then the final version of that was mostly complete. The final DOS release.
Um, I wouldn't really say mostly complete. I tried to tie up enough loose ends in it when I released it that way, because when I did release the final DOS version, I knew that one, I was moving to Windows, and two, I was going to rewrite the engine because of some issues I was having with the earlier one, which is what led directly into EO2.
Nice. And that was in DOS for most of its life. Like, when that final DOS release was, what, 07, 08?
I'm not really sure actually. There was, for a while, I was trying to keep up EO2 in DOS also, but eventually the feature set just grew beyond that, so I kind of left it behind.
Right. But I then guess going into there, before we go back and talk about another of your major projects that everyone asks about, could you go into EO2 itself? Because, like, for those who are unfamiliar, there's now a demo version of Mettrix. It's playable on PC. It's on Mac and Linux as well, I believe. But then perhaps this is the most mind-blowing thing for me and what inspired the piece. Playable on the Wii and PSP as well. And I believe you said, like, there's even an attempt at a DS version as well?
Not for the DS. That was you might be thinking of the time that I ported my Game Boy Advance Sonic port over to the DS.
That's what it is. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was thinking of something else. I didn't know you ported that one to the DS. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You see, a lot of great projects as well. I guess, but what was the inspiration on EO2 before we go back and talk about some of your other incredible projects?
Well, I had wanted to create basically a multi-platform game engine that could be used by anyone for a while, and I started. I tried like very early on, way in the late 90s, and all I got as far was I only got as far as making sort of a really, really basic interface, just the visuals, not even an implementation. And I realized I don't know how to do this. And so that kind of went off to the side until later, when I was working on Project Mettrix. And one of the things that I did with the engine was I implemented a scripting system where you could create your own title cards, title screens, stuff like that. And that was just basically for once I had separated some of the data from the main program and made it possible to edit and make your own game packages with it. So it would still be like a Sonic game, and you could only use what was programmed into Project Mettrix, but you could dress it up, add new levels, change the HUD, change the title screen, stuff like that. And by the time I found out that there were some problems buried deep within the original engine, and I decided to make a new one from mostly scratch. That became EO2, and I took the script system that I used for the title cards, title screens, and stuff like that, and just expanded it so that you could control more stuff like game flow and things. And then from there, I took the built-in Sonic functionality that I did, and piece by piece, I took it out and replaced it with stuff that was implemented through the script system until it got to the point where I have a basic player implementation that you can basically use the scripts to turn into anything.
Wow. And as I said, it's incredible because not only does the game run on all these platforms, but like it runs very smoothly on all of them as well, which is, I mean, I know it's a Sonic game, right? 16 bits, but, it plays, on all these different platforms just as you'd expect Sonic. Little to no slowdown or sprite flickering or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I've tried like real hard from the beginning to get it just right. Like the earlier Project Mettrix stuff, some of that's pretty messy still.
Yeah.
But it's still like got high praise at the time for being basically the most accurate that had been attempted so far. But it still had a way to go.
No, for sure. But speaking of things that had a way to go, one of probably your famous, rather most infamous projects was after Sonic Genesis, which came out, which what many people know, Sonic 06 was released as a 15th anniversary game for Sonic. But as well, we got Sonic Genesis, which was a port of Sonic 1 to the Game Boy Advance. And it was just a broken, unplayable mess, essentially. So, you took it upon yourself to make a demo version of Sonic 1 for the Game Boy Advance that was literally pretty much just as playable as the original game, but also has the spin dash in it as well, and like the extra stuff they tried and failed miserably to do with Genesis. So like what led to that?
Okay, sort of. I've been watching development for a while and was interested in it, and as it got closer to release time, more of the material that they released kind of demonstrated more the kind of quality that it actually turned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, there were some strange rumors going around with people saying stuff like, well, it's that way because Sonic can't be done on the Game Boy Advance and stuff like that.
Even though we got
like
3 different Sonic Advance games.
Yeah. And that's another weird thing. There's another rumor going around that that they built it off of the Sonic Advance engine, and because of that, then there's some reason that the assets didn't work with it, and that's why it's so funky. I don't even know where they get that idea really, but Well, actually, if you want to know where it came from, there was like I think in 2005 or something when Java phones were popular in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
There was a version of Sonic 1 and a version of Sonic 2 that they created for that, and I had a chance to try it out a little while ago, and if you like just really look at it carefully, if you play that one, you take a good look at it, and then you play Sonic Genesis, you take a good look at it, it's the same thing. So it was just.
So it was literally a straight port.
Yeah. So it was like they rewrote it in Java for those phones,
mm-hmm.
and then they took the phone version and kind of, I assume took it from Java to C, which isn't that big of a stretch,
mm-hmm.
and then just use that.
That actually explains a lot, because I remember around a time, that's right when they closed out the last of the. It was still EB Games in Texas until like around that time, and that's when they all became GameStops. And I remember reading a random Game Informer back in the day, because I read that, and one of the criticisms of Sonic Genesis, I think it was Game Informer, was like, oh, this music sounds like it's coming out of a tinny mobile phone. I'm like, oh, that explains it perfectly now.
Yeah, It's the MIDI files that they used with the mobile version.
Like that explains everything. So was it just an overall poor quality that inspired you to make your version not even a year later?
Sort of. It was kind of those weird rumors too about not being able to do it on the Game Boy Advance. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I know that the Game Boy Advance I know what it can do. I hadn't done anything with it yet, but I also knew of the games that were on it, and I knew basically what the specs were, and it definitely outclasses the Genesis. But
Mm-hmm. It was 32-bit, yeah?
yeah,
Yeah.
mostly it would be the graphics capabilities and the processor speed though.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, well, that sounds like a fun project. I'll just try it myself.
Right. And as I said, it plays well. Like if no one's tried the game out, I mean, you can still download it from Sonic Retro, I think, if everyone wants to try it, because I mean, it's Sonic. It's just Green Hill Zone, but like you have the spin dash. It's a great port of the
Yeah.
game. It can't, it's a brilliant demo.
Yeah. Using the L and R buttons, you can get Tails and Knuckles also.
Oh, I did not know that. You see, so it's even more feature filled than the game they made, and it runs perfectly. But I guess probably the most impressive project, and the one that most people seem to know of, but one that I guess as time go on, people don't realize that you actually were involved with, was Sonic Megamix, which is one of the most impressive hacks I've seen in a while, just especially for all the cool, weird technical stuff it does. So uh, you just it's not a like the most recent version, which was what 2015, wasn't even on the Genesis anymore. It was on the Sega CD, or I guess it was on the CD since version 4. But
Yeah.
and it has 5 different playable characters. And so how did you come on to Megamix? Because I know that was another one that you came on to, and then eventually became project lead. And towards the end, you were actually the only one working on it, actually.
Yeah. So that started out with another person. Not really sure if you want me to mention his name on here. Like,
No, I know the controversy about him, so yeah, we won't go into him.
okay, so yeah, he started out making it, and at the time it was basically a really basic level hack, color palette changing. I think the big thing that he wanted to show off was that the music was changed, and some of it was edited because that was one of his things, was doing music edits for those games. And that's why I came to him originally, because I was working on my port of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 to the Sega CD at the time, and I wanted to create a sort of hub world thing for you to be able to access which one you want to play. And I wanted to use the music from Chaotix called Walkin'. It's one of the ones that plays in their hub world.
And also, just side note, I use it in like every other video at the beginning. Just a little fun fact, but go on.
So I hadn't done anything with I hadn't done very much with the music at the time, and I knew that he was already just like into that and able to just whip stuff up like that. So I asked him if he would make a version of that would work in the Sonic 1 sound driver for me. And I told him that in return that I would work on some bits that he wanted for Sonic Megamix. Like one of the things that he wanted was to add the homing attack for Sonic. So I'm like, okay, I'll put in the homing attack.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did that, then we just continued to work together on it. And I suddenly I had a little bit more say in how it was developed and stuff over time.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we decided to build a bigger team, because we decided we wanted to do more with it. So with me and him as founders, we brought on a few other people. There was, I hope I don't forget anybody. There was Aqua Slash, J-Man, Marky Jester, Mark, M-A-R-C, Mark. Rob Joe did the levels.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like, even go on, like, I know Leila Wilson, who previously interviewed on a podcast in the iCard, if you're watching on YouTube, and also did Freedom Planet, did a lot of the music that was found in the CD, the later CD versions.
Yeah, she did, like, at least half of the music that we have there, I think.
And then,
like,
oh, go on.
Oh, I was just going to point out the boss music in particular is one that I like that she did.
Yeah, that's the one that I remember hearing, because I remember I think it was in the Not Cancelled trailer you posted that it was showcased in.
I'm not sure. Actually, it's been a while.
Yeah, that's one trailer that actually sticks out, because one of the last trailers before it was canceled was a trailer called Not Cancelled.
Yeah, there was one called Never Cancelled that I basically titled it that because of the rampant speculation that it had been canceled and some drama of sorts and stuff that was going on within the community due to the idea that it was canceled. And so I would just wanted to finally dispel that so that some of that would sort of die down. And I put up the video that I called Never Cancelled, because over time people had kept insisting that it was canceled, and like it was several different instances of having been canceled. Right. But the entire time none of those instances were true. It had never actually been canceled.
So I guess you came on 04
or
so?
Yeah. And
then from there we got the final Genesis version, which I guess going into that final Genesis version, would you say that there's like a word that in itself could be called the complete game in a sense?
It's sort of complete. Like the earlier versions that were numbered, like 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, they were made such that they could be considered complete. Mm-hmm. And then there's another version that was after 3 that got leaked, and it's sort of on the way to what became 4, but it's also not in a complete state. It wasn't meant to be released either.
And I guess one of the most controversial things about Megamix is, have you seen the bootleg cartridges made that are sold in the black market of various Genesis versions of Megamix? Like, how did you feel when you found out about those, and when did you discover those?
I'd say that I think I found out about them sometime around 2008, 2009, maybe. Mm-hmm. Not really sure. I wasn't very happy, really.
Because if I remember, and starting 4.0, which was the first Sega CD version of Megamix, which, blew my mind as well. It's like, whoa, a Sonic fan game, but it's not technically on the Genesis, technically. But, or I guess Sonic ROM hack, but I remember that there started to be like a thing at the beginning that said that, this game is meant to be played for free and should not be bought under any circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that what prompted that?
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Well, sort of that, and there's this other thing that's like produced or licensed by Sega. It's part of the BIOS. It always comes up before everything. And from what I read, there's like, have you heard about the Sega versus Accolade trial thing?
I haven't. So if you go into detail on that briefly.
Okay, so back in the Genesis days, and well, this is something that sort of reaches back to the NES too. Like, people would want to create their own games that they would release on a platform like the NES or the Genesis. And
so like with Tengen.
yeah. And so the companies who made the hardware would want to have the ability to use the hardware licensed out to the people who would do it, because they basically wanted a quality product, so they wanted to be able to exert some form of quality control over the games that were released on their product, which that makes sense, because why would you want somebody making your product look bad?
Yeah, and even for all the bad games that were on the NES, like if you take a look at something unlicensed like Action 52, where some of the games on there literally will not boot.
Yeah.
Alfred and the Fennec, my absolute favorite. But continue.
So sometime in the 90s, Accolade was trying to put something on the Genesis, and they had found a way to do it, because one of the things that Sega did to prevent people from doing that was they created the TMSS trademark security system, which started shipping with newer versions of the Model 1 Mega Drive and all Model 2s and forward from there. And what it would do is it would check for a certain thing written within the cartridge at a certain place, and if it wasn't there, it wouldn't allow it to boot up. And what it was looking for was the string Sega, and the reasoning behind them using it like that was Sega is a trademarked word, and therefore nobody else can use it without violating their trademark. And when it came time for Accolade to try and fight to keep theirs on there, Sega had found out that's what they'd done, and they took them to court over the trademark infringement. And ultimately, the court ruled that if a computer hardware exists, anybody should be able to make software for it. And therefore, if the only way to make software for the Genesis was to store the Sega trademark at that location on the cartridge, then it was legal for them to do so.
Wow. So, and I guess Megamix took advantage of a similar thing at that point?
Not exactly. It uses boot security code from Sonic CD, and but the BIOS is sort of a thing that came from that same sort of thinking, where if they make it say that it was produced or licensed by Sega, and then somebody puts something on there that's not, that makes it untrue, and then throws it into some kind of legal question or something. So basically, I just went that direction with it. I put the message on there. Regardless of what the previous screen says, this was not produced or licensed by Sega, and that is a necessary part of the boot process that I cannot remove. But just letting you know.
Yeah. Just in case you actually bought this on cart, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, I guess going to one more, controversial game question before we get on to, talking about the CD versions a bit. What's your thoughts, not on the bootleg cartridges, but on like the fan-made reproduction cartridges, or say people playing on EverDrives? Like, is there a difference between fan-made repros or?
Well, what bothered me about it was just like the amount of work that we had put into it, and then my first thought was, somebody's trying to make money on us, and
we aren't getting paid for this.
Yeah, and we weren't getting paid for it. We can't get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit upsetting. I found another person who was doing that on Etsy recently, that was selling repro cartridges like that, and nice enough guy. I convinced him to actually give me a copy of the games that I had created that he put on the cartridge, and I have those sitting in the other room right now.
But like with those, like, so with that situation, like, you're fine with it as long as they're nice about it, I guess, or
I would prefer they not, yeah, but
at least you have them.
Yeah, at least I have some now. I got something out of it, as minor as it may be.
Yeah, no, for sure. But but on the flip side, like, it's fine if someone just gets like an SD to Genesis or a Genesis EverDrive and just plays them. Like, that's fine.
Oh, that's just playing the game on what you got. You get the ROM. If you have that hardware, you can play it on the real hardware. That's one of the reasons that I ported the game to the Sega CD was that it's just so easy to make bootable and playable Sega CD games. So for anybody who actually had a Sega CD, they wouldn't need any third-party hardware to play the game.
They just have to burn a disc because there's essentially no copy protection because like when the CD came out, CDs were such a they weren't as cheap and easy to buy as they were nowadays. So
Yeah.
they just kind of assumed that'd be the copy protection. By the time it was broken, they'd have moved on.
Yeah.
So I guess going into the CD version, was it your work on Sonic 1 and 2 CD that made you decide to port Megamix?
Pretty much, yeah. There was a particular direction I was going with Sonic 1 and 2 that I was porting over, and things kind of got a little odd with that in the community. There were some unexpected things that came up, and well, I can be a little specific about that.
Yeah.
Technically, nobody was supposed to know that I was working on this. And the reason for that was that I just wanted to finish it. I wanted to finish it and get it prepared and then have it out there for everybody. And somebody that I was working on another project with at the time, I think he was just kind of spiteful about my ability.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody mentioned even the prospect of a port of Sonic 1 to the Sega CD, he snapped at him in public and said something about me already doing it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then I tried to keep it quiet, and there started a lot of drama about why I wasn't releasing it or something already, even though I wasn't finished, and how I was hoarding it and keeping it to myself, even though my ultimate goal was to release the source for everybody to use.
Well, and I've noticed that as a trend with your works because you're very much so the mindset of if I'm going to release something, no patches, no updates, it needs to be playable as soon as it's out there.
Well, I like to have my work finished. I like to have it polished at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to do. It was a project that like somebody counted this as a negative against me too when they said so, but it was the fact that I wanted to do the project myself because it was something that I wanted to do, something that I wanted to be able to accomplish.
Right.
And yeah, so I wanted to get it to a point where it was actually usable and then just let everybody have it. But things went pretty downhill.
Yeah.
And I got angry and I just released it. I released a binary the way it was. I said, here, this is what I did. I wasn't just talking.
Yeah. Oh, it's fine. Swearing's fine. I'll censor it in post.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I did. I'm not talking shit. Or rather, other people aren't saying things that are causing me to say things that ultimately are me talking shit. I was actually doing this. I actually accomplished this. Here it is. And so that's where it ended for a while. And around 2009 or so, after we had gotten a few more people on the project with Megamix, I had just decided, I have this thing that I'm not doing anything with. Why don't I use it for this project? And I decided that I was going to surprise the rest of the team by porting it over to the Sega CD myself as sort of a Christmas present. And that pretty much worked out because I was able to get enough of it finished at the time. And I sort of used the 1 and 2 as a template, but it was more like it's something that's already done and I can see what I did and how it can be done, but I also sort of redid it from scratch.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that led to 4.0, but then the only release we got, because after that, y'all pretty much just overhauled the game completely. New graphics, of course, the original soundtrack. And then eventually we got 5.0, but that was actually a leaked version, which happened with a server hack and whatnot. So I mentioned that in the mini documentary style video I did on my main channel over a year ago. So what was exactly the full story behind that, which happened with that?
Well, one of our members had made some changes to it that he wanted to show us that he didn't want to put on our repo that we were using to for source control and to work on the project together. And he just wanted to show us that, and he put it on his personal FTP area on a particular server, which several of us were in fact using for ourselves, for other stuff. And somebody had found out that there was an exploit for the server software that was running on there that would allow them to get root access to people's folders. And he just happened across one day, as he was looking through various people's folders, he found that build. And
was a guy within the Sonic community, or just kind of a general troll, or just kind of a guy who wanted to snoop on people, or?
I really don't know the person well. It's somebody that I think stuck with the community. May have been a troll at the time. I don't really know. That was my first ever experience with that person.
Oh. Weird way to encounter someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, hey, you kind of stole a thing we were working on. But was that kind of general reaction, though, when it got leaked out there?
You mean by the team, or the public?
What was the team's reaction when that build got leaked?
I was very upset personally. The rest of the team, they weren't too happy about it, but I'm not sure if it bothered them as much as it did me. But it was deep into development, very, very rough, a lot of stuff missing, yet at the same time, if you play it, you wouldn't really get a lot of surprises out of the final. And like, why would you play a horribly incomplete, broken version when you could wait just a little bit longer and get the complete one and see everything as it's meant to be?
For sure, because I remember playing that version. Don't get me wrong, what y'all had accomplished there is phenomenally impressive. Like, there's a CD-style special stages, which, as you confirmed, just coincidentally reminded me of the Mania special stages as well. Because, it's less you attacking UFOs and more you chasing them.
Yeah. The UFOs in that case are more for... I think that I use those for time extension in that version. Basically, the goal of that special stage was to collect a certain number of rings.
Mm-hmm. But like I remember, like some characters, like the special stage would crash the game, and some zones weren't ready. So, how far out? Like, did that leak delay the project a bit?
I don't think that it. I don't think it really did significantly. It just kind of just tripped us up a little bit, kind of messed with morale a little bit.
For sure. Though it did end up being the last release, because this game started, 03, you came on 04, ported to CD about 08, 09, and then officially canceled in 2016. And what essentially led up to the cancellation?
The ultimate, like, actual cancellation sort of came on due to the team sort of, like, drifted apart a little bit. Like, some of the team still stayed in contact. We still hung out in our chat about the game too, but more and more other projects would start coming up, live stuff would start coming up, we just wouldn't have anything to say or not have any progress on the game being made.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to kick it off a few times myself. Like it seemed to be something that sort of worked. Like if I was able to get a significant amount of work into the game and show it to everybody else, then they get a little bit motivated and start chugging out a little bit of stuff. But more and more, I'd have other stuff that I needed to do that just like left me with periods of downtime on the game in particular, and like I can't really get on the rest of the team about whether they're doing or not doing something if I'm not doing it, regardless of why I'm not doing it.
Right.
And so it just kind of fizzled out more toward the end, and yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and have it known that the game wasn't going to be continued. One of the things that I wanted to do was get that information out of the way before Sonic Mania was announced, because it's sort of like a bad news, good news thing.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned, I remember analyzing that post, going into my pseudo game theorist mode and of that where you're like, you mentioned side one, the reason of you personally canceling it due to a major project you were working on at the time. By the time you'd canceled, even though it wasn't announced yet, had work on Mania already begun?
Not official work on the actual project,
Mm-hmm.
but it was known that that's where we were headed, which was one of the reasons I was comfortable with going ahead and announcing the cancellation. Was that I knew that this was coming up, and I knew that it would, I don't know, be light at the end of the tunnel in this.
Yeah. Because it was April 16 that Megamix was canceled, but then July 16 that Mania was announced to pretty much a fan base that often gets shown such a negative light just reacted to say the least, phenomenally. Like everyone, I remember going into local game stores and them just kind of playing the best, cleanest rips of the Studiopolis music they could find.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Back on an earlier topic, you were talking about Leila doing most of the music. There were at least two other people that did some of the music, and City Outskirts in particular was somebody named Gecko Yamori.
Oh, sounds familiar.
Yeah, he had a YouTube channel for a while. I'm not sure what happened to him at this point.
And then who's the other one you were thinking of? Or
Mark. Mark Gordon calls himself Sinosu.
Oh, cool. So Megamix was going to be huge. I guess kind of going to workflow, because during a lot of this there was a lot of overlap, because you're working on Mettrix, you're working on Megamix, and then there's some overlap as well of other projects such as your Sonic 1 GBA and later DS port. And then of course later on there are the mobile ports you worked on of Sonic 1 and 2 officially by Sega, which two other games everyone should check out, by the way. People give me the weirdest look when I say the mobile version of Sonic 2 is the best version, but it is. It has Hidden Palace Zone in it. But how many projects, along with your own personal projects that you're working on, or work projects, were you working on max at once during all this?
During the time I was working on things with Sega?
Not just with Sega, but like while you were working on both Megamix and Mettrix, and even like your other fan projects.
Oh, okay. Well, as far as the time that I would work with Sega goes, then those are sort of an exclusive thing. So. And they're time critical and stuff, so you'd work just basically on that. Like I wouldn't really have anything to do with anything else except maybe a conversation here or there or something, but they wouldn't really be something that I was doing during my time with Sega.
But outside of that, like, what was the max number of projects you were ever working at once during just during your entire time in the fan community?
Uh, well, if you consider them being in progress all at once, Uh, let's see, Project Mettrix. Uh, got to the point where I did started developing AO2, which has become Headcanon Game Engine. That's a project unto itself. And then at one point, I was working with my wife on a Mega Man fan game.
Oh, was that Triple Threat?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I was. So that's why that one runs on EO2.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
And let's see what else. There was Soned, which was Soned 2 at the time. Um, and so I was working on all of those. I was working on all of those when it came around to 2005, when I did Knuckles and Sonic 1. So that would be 5 simultaneous projects at that point.
Incredible.
Knuckles and Sonic 1 was done by the time I did the Sonic 1 and 2 to CD thing. And that was done when I went and did the DS versions of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD.
Out of curiosity, what led to you making the DS versions of all of them? Was that around the same time that Sega did their own ports?
Sort of, yeah. Like the first thing was when Christian had come to me for help about putting together a pitch demo for CD. While I was reverse engineering some of the stuff that he needed to remake and putting together like pseudocode and stuff for him to read, I was also rebuilding it myself, and I just decided to go ahead and try and rebuild it myself using the Game Boy Advance DS engine, so that I could make sure that I was understanding it correctly and see it working. And as that came together, I just decided to add on more to it. And I knew that the method that he was using to bring Sonic CD to mobile, which would work, like, so the reason that it was necessary to even do this was that mobile phones weren't powerful enough at the time to emulate the Sega CD, because for one thing, with the Sega CD, you've got the Genesis and the Sega CD, two processors that you have to emulate simultaneously, and that gets kind of complicated. And that was just something Sega wouldn't be able to do without rewriting Sonic CD more natively for the hardware, which is sort of what he was doing with the Retro Engine as its interpreter that ran natively, and Sonic CD written in that. And I knew that wouldn't work on the DS, with it being much lower spec, so it wouldn't be able to run an interpreter, and it would need the game to run directly on natively on the system. So I started to put together the first part of Sonic CD for that at the same time that Christian was doing his version of Sonic CD, and I was hoping that I could get that taken up as another project to release the game on the DS at the same time.
Nice. And how playable was the DS version around the time that you made the pitch?
I never got to make the pitch, actually.
Oh. But I guess when you stopped working on that one, then how far along was it?
There was the entirety of Palm Tree Panic, all the levels, all the time zones, time swapping was fully functional, all the basic Sonic stuff, all the objects, enemies, bosses, and there was also the special stage, fully complete.
Nice. And I'll carry us on the special stage. Was it more akin to the original version, or was it a lot smoother, like in the iOS 360 Steam port?
It was smooth.
Smooth?
Mm-hmm.
Completely rebuilt?
Yeah.
I said blows my mind when I find out about stuff like that, right? Especially on the DS. Like, the DS I know is like, it's like in between an N64 and a GameCube in power, but like, No, still though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then again, I saw Sega's own ports on there, which were decent, but also a little iffy.
So as far as those go, they had announced that they were working on uh I forget what they call it. Was it just called Sonic the Hedgehog Collection?
I think it was called like the Sonic Genesis Classics Collection or something like that.
Yeah. Well, they had just announced that they were working on it, and I knew that a lot of the stuff that they were doing regarding older games like that was emulation. And I'm like, well, I have this. I have the Sonic one that I did on the DS, which I ported to, or on the Game Boy Advance, which I ported to the DS because the DS actually runs on a lot of the Game Boy Advance's actual hardware, so a lot of stuff is directly compatible.
Mm-hmm.
And like, well, if I can take this to them, and they like that, then we can get something that runs better than an emulation, is more featured than an emulation, all that. And so I built Sonic 1. The amount of Sonic 1 that I had was pretty much complete. So I added to that Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, in both cases, the first zone in full special stage.
Oh, cool.
And I meant to show that to them. I got the name of somebody to show it to, but I think that I sent him the email that I had sent him like at the beginning of his Christmas break or something.
Oh no.
And then by the time anything could be done about that, he had switched positions within the company, so he wasn't even relevant for this anymore. So I lost out on that.
But an idea of what could have been though, and it sounds, out of curiosity, are there playable versions of those floating around there, or can they just not be released? Or
Oh, I released those a while ago. They're on my website actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've got the main headcanon site, and then I have a sub-site for other projects that are like not associated with the company. Mostly a bunch of fan projects.
And then I guess just kind of going from there, before we end off, we've been going over an hour now. What projects can we expect in the future that you can talk about?
Well, I am working on something right now that I'm trying to pitch that I don't know. I don't know if it will work out. Like there's some there's a little bit of good push behind it already, but I don't know if it will work out. But it's not really something I can talk about right now. But I'm sure the question is it something Sonic? No, nah, no, it's not Sonic this time. There are some other projects that I'm working on just as specific headcanon projects with another group of people. See, there's one that I created for I think it was 2013. Do you know the Game Jam Ludum Dare?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. So me and my wife created some game that we called Fantastic Franklin for the one in 2013, and we're planning to turn that into a fully fledged game with a level editor too. And 'cause I like level editors. A lot of my stuff's probably going to have it if they can.
No, for sure. I love that. I love that stuff. Mega Man Powered Up, Mario Maker.
Yeah.
Love that type of stuff.
So there's that one, which is kind of a puzzle platformer, and then next one up is a game that it went through several names. The last name that we've had that stuck with it was Vertebreaker. It's sort of a Castlevania sort of thing, little bit of homage, a little bit of a parody. With the main protagonist is a skeleton. It has a whip made of a backbone.
Oh, it reminds me a bit of, I'm not sure if you ever played like Mr. Bones on the Saturn, but I'm getting a little bit of that vibe.
Possibly. I haven't actually seen that one.
It's weird. You're like a skeleton who plays guitar and is fighting other skeletons. I guess it's completely different except for the fact it's a skeleton.
So one of the main things about that we're hoping to be able to accomplish with it is that the whip actually functions as a grappling hook too. So there's like some swinging elements to it,
Oh,
and
sweet.
it's
Are we
supposed to be
talking? Are we talking like kind of a Bionic Commando style thing?
sort of like, yeah, you like latch onto the ceiling, swing over gaps, swing around and onto platforms, stuff like that.
Sweet. And then any other projects?
There's the other one that I think we're going to other than what I'm doing right now. I think that the first one of these three is going to be the one that we have called Flamingo. Started out with a concept like sort of like Ninja Gaiden.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you're playing this female thief with sort of ninja type moves, who's breaking into places, taking stuff.
Oh, sweet. And then, I guess these are. As I'm not even going to ask on dates on them because I know that's always subject to change in gaming. But coming,
Yeah, they're
we
they'll
can
be
just say they're coming.
yeah.
I said I'm not going to ask on dates because I know everything can change in an instant during development.
Yeah, it's like really going to depend on how long this one takes. Then how long that takes to actually develop itself. Um,
And then someone actually from my Discord asked me to ask you about this before, I guess before we wrap up, or pretty much just wants me to ask everyone about this. Thoughts on Rystar?
I've done with Rystar.
Yeah, it's a good.
Yeah, yeah. I've had we've had like a lot of comments about are we going to remaster Rystar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a nice idea, but like I couldn't say if anything like that was going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it like wouldn't really be a question that I could answer other than I like Rystar.
Yeah, you like it, and that's
Yeah.
all you're gonna say. So I guess with that thing to get everyone thinking, where can everyone find your stuff? Of course, you're on Twitter, and then there's your own website. So just I guess plug all that.
Okay. Yeah. My Twitter. My personal Twitter is at HC Stealth, and I have a more business oriented Twitter, just head_canon. Like the actual full name was already taken.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's the one where I just post more about finished projects, stuff related to the company and stuff like that. And yeah, if you want to keep up with me and everything else, then that would be the HC Stealth one. And the website is www.headcanon.com.
sweet. So that thank you very much for coming along, Simon. Any final thoughts or just thoughts on the Sonic community before we end off?
Uh, well, uh, I know that Sage is coming up, and I haven't really been able to look at stuff that was done there in the last couple of years or so. People seem to be excited about. Well, you may or may not know that I was recently asking if anybody would be interested in me doing like Let's Plays or streams or stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and several people are excited about me playing some games from Sage, and this will be the first year that I actually get to do that in a while, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I'm always looking forward to Sage. Of course, ROM hacks what are both things that I know, you more so on the developing side and me more so, I guess, just as a nerd who likes to play games. Something we're both passionate about. So definitely looking forward to Sage and the hacking contest that's coming up. Has hacking contest come up or is it passed already? I was
Uh,
traveling most of summer.
I'm not sure actually. I think that they've started having it coincide directly with Sage.
All right, so in that case, I'm looking forward to both of those. uh, so with that, thank you very much for joining me for this podcast.
Oh, no problem. I had fun.
Cool, and of course, thank you all at home very much for watching or listening to this episode of the Stuff We Say podcast. If you feel so inclined, subscribe on YouTube or follow on your platform of choice, and remember to stay up. keep up with me personally either on Twitter at StuffWePlay or by following my main channel that's more game reviews and retrospectives and whatnot on youtube.com/StuffWePlay. So once again, thank you for listening to the Stuff We Say podcast. Stay classy, and I'll see all of you next time.